Imagine it's a Tuesday morning, 14 months after the best day of your life. You're sitting at the kitchen table, coffee going cold, staring at a credit card statement. And the number on that statement, $23,000, is almost exactly what you spent on your wedding. You and your partner don't fight much, but lately every conversation about money ends the same way. Quiet, tense, a little sad. You can't go on the honeymoon you actually wanted because that's another $6,000 you don't have. You can't move into the apartment you had your eye on because the deposit feels impossible. And somewhere in the back of your head, a thought you'd never say out loud keeps surfacing. Was it worth it?
That question. That exact moment of quiet regret around one of the most emotionally loaded decisions of your life. That's what we're talking about today. My name is Nico. I spend way too much time thinking about money, and this channel is where I break down the financial traps that quietly wreck people's lives before they even realize what's happening. If you're new here, hit subscribe and drop a like on this video. It genuinely helps get this content in front of people who need it, and trust me, a lot of people need this one. Now let's get into it.
Here's a number that should stop you cold. The average American wedding in 2024 cost just over $35,000. $35,000 for a single day. And before you say that's not me, I'd never spend that much. The average person says that too, right up until they're in the middle of planning and the costs have already spiraled past what they promised themselves. Because here's the thing nobody tells you when you get engaged. The wedding industry is one of the most psychologically sophisticated sales machines on the planet, and it's been perfecting its pitch for decades.
But we'll get to the psychology in a minute. First, let's just talk about the raw scale of the problem. According to a survey by The Knot, roughly 45% of couples go into debt to pay for their wedding, nearly half. And among couples who do go into debt, the average amount owed is around $11,000 to $16,000, depending on the study you look at. Now combine that with the fact that the median household savings rate in America is hovering around 3 to 4%, and you start to realize most couples are not paying for these weddings out of savings. They are financing a party on credit.
And here's where it gets interesting. The debt itself is only part of the problem. Most people, when they think about wedding debt, just think about the balance. What they never think about is what that money was actually worth. So let me show you the math, because this is the part that genuinely changes how people think about this.
Let's say you're 28 years old and you spend $20,000 on your wedding, financed on a credit card at 22% APR, which is actually the national average right now. If you make minimum payments, you're paying that off over 10 years and spending close to $30,000 in total. But let's say you're disciplined. You throw $400 a month at it and pay it off in 5 years. You've still paid around $25,000 when all is said and done. Now, here's the question nobody asks. What if instead of that $20,000 going to a wedding, it had gone into an index fund at 33 years old, 5 years later, and sat there until you were 60? At a 10% average annual return, that $20,000 becomes roughly $280,000 by retirement. $280,000 from one day. That's the real cost of the wedding debt trap, not the number on the credit card statement. The wealth you never built.
I've seen this play out so many times. A couple spends 2 years paying off wedding debt instead of building an emergency fund. Then one of them loses a job and suddenly they're right back in debt. Or they delay buying a home by 3 years because their debt-to-income ratio won't qualify them for a mortgage. Or they spend their entire 30s feeling financially behind, never quite understanding why, when the answer traces back to a single decision made in their late 20s when they were more focused on what their wedding looked like than what their life was going to cost. So why does this keep happening? Why do smart, otherwise financially responsible people make this choice over and over again? This is the psychology layer, and it's the part nobody talks about honestly enough.
The wedding industry is built on 3 emotional levers. The first is identity. Getting engaged, for a lot of people, is the first major public milestone of adulthood. And somewhere along the way, the wedding stopped being a celebration of a relationship and became a statement of who you are. The venue, the flowers, the guest count, the dress, these things get loaded with meaning about your worth, your taste, your success. Spending less feels like admitting something, and that fear is worth a lot of money to vendors. The second lever is comparison. You've been to weddings, you've seen what other people do, and whether you consciously realize it or not, you have a baseline expectation, a floor below which your wedding would feel embarrassing. That floor keeps creeping up because every wedding you attend recalibrates your sense of normal. A buffet dinner used to be fine. Now it feels like cutting corners. A DJ used to be standard. Now a live band is the expectation for certain circles. This is called social ratcheting, and it's one of the most expensive, invisible forces in personal finance. The third lever is the once-in-a-lifetime framing. You will hear this phrase or some version of it dozens of times during wedding planning. It only happens once. You'll regret not doing it right. You deserve this. And look, there's emotional truth in that. Weddings are significant. But once in a lifetime is one of the most dangerous financial justifications there is. It's the same logic people use to go into debt for vacations, for cars, for experiences they can't afford. It short-circuits the future self. You stop asking, what does this cost me over 10 years, and start asking, will I regret not having the good photographer? Those are very different questions. So what do you actually do with this? Because I know someone watching this is either already in wedding debt or about to start planning, and I want to give you something real and practical, not just a lecture.
First, set the budget before you do anything else. Before you visit a single venue, before you follow one wedding Instagram account, before you say the word centerpiece out loud, sit down with your partner and decide what you can actually spend without going into debt. Not what you wish you could spend, what you have, cash, savings, family contributions that are confirmed, not assumed. That number is your ceiling. Everything else, the vision board, the Pinterest saves, the magazine inspiration, comes after the ceiling is set. Because if you do it the other way, you'll spend months falling in love with a $40,000 wedding and then try to squeeze it into $15,000, and you'll hate every compromise.
Second, understand the power of prioritization. Most couples, when they break down what they actually remember and cherish about their wedding, it comes down to 3 or 4 things: the ceremony itself, the food, the music, the photos. Everything else, the floral arrangements, the chair sashes, the custom cocktail napkins, the photo booth, these are things that cost money and that almost no one remembers 6 months later. Spend on the things that matter. Slash everything else without guilt.
Third, if family money is involved in paying for the wedding, have a clear, early, honest conversation about strings attached. Family contributions that come with expectations about guest lists, venues, or traditions can quietly push costs 30 to 50% higher. Sometimes the most expensive wedding gift is the one that comes with conditions. And fourth, and this one might feel uncomfortable, but I think it's worth saying, reconsider the guest count. The single biggest lever on wedding cost is how many people are in the room. Average catering cost per guest runs between $70 and $150 depending on your market. That means the difference between 150 guests and 80 guests could be $5,000 to $10,000. A lot of people add guests because of obligation. Distant relatives, co-workers, old friends they haven't spoken to in years. But those 20 extra guests at $100 a head are $2,000 that could have been your emergency fund, your honeymoon, your first investment account.
Here's the long view that I want you to actually sit with for a second. Your 20s and 30s are not just years of your life. They are the most powerful compounding window of your financial life. Every dollar you invest at 27 is worth dramatically more than every dollar you invest at 42. That's not a metaphor, that's math. The wealth gap between people who build smart habits in their 20s and people who spend their 20s digging out of lifestyle debt isn't about income. It's almost entirely about timing.
And one of the most common ways I see people blow that window, not dramatically, not with one catastrophic decision, but quietly, is by starting a marriage $20,000 in the hole and spending the first 5 years of building a life together just trying to break even. The wedding isn't the trap, to be clear. Marriage is one of the most financially beneficial decisions most people can make. Shared expenses, combined income, aligned goals, that's all real. The trap is the wedding debt. The trap is optimizing for one day at the expense of every day after.
If you're watching this before you've started planning, you have more power than you think. A beautiful wedding and a financially strong marriage are not mutually exclusive. Plenty of people throw incredible weddings for $8,000 or $12,000. It takes intention. It takes saying no to some things, but those couples aren't missing something. In most cases, they're ahead.
If you're watching this and you're already in the debt, the answer is simple, but not easy. Aggressive payoff, minimum lifestyle inflation, and redirect every freed up dollar toward building the foundation you are actually building a marriage to have. The debt doesn't define the marriage. What you do next does.
If this video made you think differently about even one financial decision in your future, share it with someone who's engaged right now. They might not want to hear it, but they need to. And if you want to go deeper on the compounding math behind decisions like this one, why your 30s matter more than most people realize, I've got a video on that right here. I'll see you there.